Summary. The narrator, Nick Carraway, lives in the West Egg District of Long Island. His next-door neighbor is a mysterious man called J. Gatsby. Nick is a young man from a prominent Midwestern family. In some sense, the novel is Nick's memoir, his unique view of the events of the summer of 1922. Chapter 1. Soon after arriving in New York, Nick visits his relative, Daisy Buchanan, and her husband, Tom. The Buchanans live in the posh Long Island district of East Egg. Tom is obsessed with the preservation of class boundaries. At the Buchanans', Nick meets Jordan Baker, a professional golf player. Hints are given about problems in Tom and Daisy's marriage. Tom has been having an affair. After visiting Tom and Daisy, Nick goes home to West Egg. There, he sees Gatsby gazing at a mysterious green light across the bay. Gatsby stretches his arms out towards the light, as though to catch and hold it. Chapter 2. Tom Buchanan takes Nick into New York City, and on the way they stop at the garage owned by George Wilson. Wilson is the husband of Myrtle, with whom Tom has been having an affair. Tom tells Myrtle to join them later. In the city, they have a vulgar party in the flat that Tom keeps for the affair. The more she drinks, the more aggressive Myrtle becomes. She begins to taunt Tom about Daisy, and Tom strikes her and breaks her nose. Chapter 3. Nick is invited to a party at Gatsby's mansion, where he runs into Jordan Baker. At the party, few people know Gatsby. Even fewer are formally invited. During the party, Nick finally meets Gatsby. He has a remarkable smile and uses "old sport" as a term of endearment. Later, Gatsby speaks to Jordan Baker alone, and afterwards she tells Nick that she has learned something amazing. She cannot yet share it with him, however. Nick and Jordan become romantically involved. Chapter 4. Gatsby takes Nick to lunch. On the way, Gatsby tells Nick that his parents died and left him a lot of money, and that he went to war and later attended Oxford University. Nick is skeptical of the story. At lunch, Gatsby introduces Nick to his business associate, Meyer Wolfsheim. Later, Jordan Baker tells Nick the story of Gatsby. He had been in love with Daisy when they met in Louisville before the war. Gatsby's extravagant lifestyle and wild parties are simply an attempt to impress Daisy. Gatsby bought the house to be close to Daisy. This is where Nick fits in. Gatsby wants Nick to arrange a meeting between himself and Daisy. Chapter 5. Nick invites Daisy to tea and tells her not to bring Tom. Gatsby comes over to inspect everything to make sure that the tea goes perfectly. After an initially awkward reunion, Gatsby and Daisy reestablish their connection. Gatsby has meticulously planned their meeting. He gives Daisy a carefully rehearsed tour of his mansion and is desperate to exhibit his wealth and possessions. The love between Gatsby and Daisy is revived. Chapter 6. Nick learns the true story of Gatsby's past. He was born James Gatz in North Dakota, but changed his name at the age of 17.
The Gold Baron, Dan
Cody, served as Gatsby's mentor until his death. Although Gatsby inherited nothing of Cody's fortune, Gatsby had created a persona and found something that he wanted to achieve at all costs. Gatsby has become wealthy through illegal activities with the sole intention of winning back Daisy. He believes that she is the key to perfect happiness. While out horseback riding, Tom Buchanan happens upon Gatsby's mansion. There he meets both Nick and Gatsby. Tom looks down on the new rich like Gatsby, as he is from an established upper-class family. Despite this, Tom and Daisy come to the next party at Gatsby's. There, he is extremely rude and condescending towards Gatsby. Daisy also seems to be unhappy at the party, which frightens Gatsby. He tells Nick that he will make things right with her, and they will be able to go back to how they once were. Chapter 7. Gatsby stops throwing his lavish parties. The only reason he threw such parties was the chance that Daisy, or someone who knew her, might attend. On a hot summer's day, Daisy invites Gatsby, Nick, and Jordan to lunch at her house. Tom figures out what is going on between Gatsby and Daisy and becomes very upset. They decided to drive into the city. There, at the Plaza Hotel, Tom and Gatsby have a bitter confrontation. Tom denounces Gatsby for his low birth and reveals to Daisy that Gatsby's fortune has been made through being a bootlegger, illegally selling alcohol during Prohibition. When Gatsby asks her to say that she never loved Tom, she can't say it. Tom scornfully sends her back to East Egg with Gatsby. Chapter 8. When Nick, Jordan, and Tom drive through the Valley of Ashes, however, they discover that Gatsby's car has hit and killed Myrtle, Tom's lover. They rush back to Tom's house in East Egg, where Nick learns from Gatsby that Daisy was driving the car when it struck Myrtle, but that Gatsby intends to take the blame. Nick asks Gatsby to go back with him, but Gatsby wants to wait outside the house to make sure that nothing happens to Daisy. Chapter 9. Early the next morning, Nick goes over to check up on Gatsby. He has been at Daisy's all night, just watching to see if she was safe. He and Nick stay up, talking about Gatsby's past. Nick has to leave Gatsby to get to work. After Nick leaves, Gatsby decides to go use his pool and relax. George Wilson was looking for Gatsby. Someone had told him that Gatsby was involved. George has leapt to the conclusion that the driver of the car that killed Myrtle must have been her lover. George, believing Gatsby to be at fault, decides to avenge her death. He finds Gatsby in the pool and shoots him dead. He then kills himself as well. Chapter 10. After the murder, Daisy and Tom leave town without leaving any means of being contacted. Nick is left to organize Gatsby's funeral, but few people attend the funeral. Nick ends his relationship with Jordan and decides to move back to the Midwest. He has figured out that Tom was the one who told Wilson that it was Gatsby who ran over Myrtle. Nick thinks of Gatsby and the role of the past and dreams of the future. Background and themes. The Jazz Age, the Roaring Twenties. The Jazz Age began soon after World War I and ended with the stock market crash of 1929. Prohibition, the ban on the sale and consumption of alcohol, made millionaires out of bootleggers. The period saw the beginning of a new style of music which combined ragtime and blues. It was an exciting time, but its basis was money and the extravagances that money could buy. This emptiness was in sharp contrast to the purity of the American dream, which held that anyone could succeed if they strove to improve themselves, and anyone could get wealthy through hard work and perseverance. The American dream. The American dream was originally about discovery and the pursuit of happiness. The 1920s, however, was an era of decayed social and moral values, when prosperity and material excess have corrupted this dream, especially on the East Coast. The unrestrained desire for money and pleasure surpassed more noble goals. In the novel, Nick thinks of the disintegration of the American dream as Gatsby's dream crumbles. Class. During the Roaring Twenties, anyone from any social background could make a fortune, but there was a class structure. Fitzgerald uses a geographical motif. West Egg represents the newly self-made millionaires. East Egg, the American aristocracy, i.e. families with old wealth. The East Egg crowd scorn the new rich in West Egg. Tom's attitude towards Gatsby is typical of this class. Ultimately, this wide class gulf is the reason why Daisy chooses to stay with her husband, who is from the same class as she is. Irresponsibility. Fitzgerald portrays how people could use their position to look down on others and live their lives not caring about other people. Tom and Daisy exemplify this stereotype. Tom cheats on Daisy. Daisy often goes over to Gatsby's, and they run away from the scene of Myrtle's death. Despite their respectable social status, their actions are selfish and inconsiderate. They live their irresponsible lives thinking only of themselves because they think they are in a class above other people. They can use their wealth and position to escape whatever they choose.